A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Welcome to a night of quite fabulous wine we have to look forward to. We've got 3 bottles of wine to go through from a winery, from an estate that could not stop winning awards last year. They're basically the Bayern Munich of wine estates in 2020. We've got 2 very special guests there. And then on to... I'm trying to think, her title changes so often. I think she's the cosmic young wine writer of the millennium, or something equally crazy at the moment. Just a wonderfully gifted wine writer, a good friend of mine, and somebody with an extraordinary ability to not just get the best out of wine and describing it, but translating that into the most amazing prose and making her a wine writer who is acclaimed right around the world, including by, amongst others, Jancis Robinson. If Jancis thinks you're cool, then you are cool in wine terms. So some wonderful people. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment. Before we do that, a couple of things to remind you of. As soon as we're done here, which will be a shade before 6 p.m, you can dash across to Instagram and jump onto the Dan Nichols Show Instagram page, where Shannon Ezra, the star of Mnet's hit new series Lioness, it is a terrific series. Catch up on it quickly if you've missed the first part, and then keep watching on. Shannon will be with me. That's just after 6 o'clock tonight on the Dan Nichols Show Instagram Live. And tomorrow, we've got great competition running there at the moment. The latest Ultra Boost trainers from Adidas will be wrapping up that competition tomorrow. We've also got some terrific wine to look forward to next week. On Monday, brand new label, Harry Hartmann, Marcel Hartmann, who I think he's a Swiss dentist who's decided he knows how to make wine. Tell you what, it looks phenomenal. The packaging is terrific. He'll be on with me on Monday. So too will Colin Truter, talking to me about some of the new releases from Ardensuch. So that's next week. And then next week, Thursday, we throw ahead to the first edition for 2021 of the South African Wine Tribe for all of our friends in the UK, together with Greg Sherwood and Wines of South Africa. Joe Waring and her team in the UK will be sampling some wine from, amongst others, the fabulous Molyneux team, trying some of the Louis Passant and also some of the Molyneux Syrah with them. That is coming up next Thursday. But for tonight, well, I guess just a little later, is Malu Lambert. You would have guessed that when I told you she was a fine young wine writer. Now, Malu is obsessed with Semillon, and so Semillon is what we try with her a little later on. But first up, we head to Stellenbosch, and an estate that I love for its golf course, that I love for its restaurant, albeit a restaurant that looks a little different now, but an estate that I also love more than I ever have before for its wine. And as I've mentioned in conversation with their esteemed winemaker in the past, there was a time, a better part of a decade ago, where I felt the wine at Kleine Zalze was pleasant, but it never really swept me away. But that certainly changed. There's a real sense of magic to it, and it's not just my opinion, because last year they won award after award after award after award. So joining me, not just Alastair Rimmer, but also Carina Gous from Kleine Zalze. Guys, a very good evening. Welcome. Lovely to have you both on Dan Really Likes Wine. Thank you for joining us. There we go. So yeah, welcome with you. And let's start by having a look back at 2020. Yeah, we couldn't really have written the script much better. The Platter team had you as their Winer of the Year. The Old Mutual Trophy Wine Show had you as the best producer. Those were just 2 of a litany of awards you got. Carina, just from a business perspective, I know that for the winemakers, the awards aren't what they focus on. They just focus on making great wine. But in establishing, growing, building this Kleine Zalze brand, we couldn't really have asked for much more last year, could you?
No, we couldn't. I must say it started all in March, when we were all still planning to go to ProWein, and we won the best South African producer and the best South African red wine at Mundus Vini, which is the big show in Germany. And then it just from there just escalated with best wine, best winery awards, best South Africa from Concours Mondial. As you say, it went into best winery of the year for Old Mutual Trophy Show, and then culminated in Platter, winning 7 5-star wines, which was amazing. And I do think it feels a bit like a plan that Kleine Zalze has been working on is coming together and all culminating in these amazing awards in one year. Because I can't claim any of the credit for this because I only really joined Kleine Zalze in the beginning of 2020. But Alastair and the team has been working really hard, and Gous investing in infrastructure, in replanting vineyards, really working on a whole, how do we showcase the premium wines of Kleine Zalze, and not that we don't want people to drink our cellar selection range. Obviously they must. But, there are so many amazing wines of Kleine Zalze that people are not necessarily aware of. So it feels like the whole plan came together, the hard work in the vineyards, the hard work in the cellar, and we just had an amazing 2020, despite everyone having a fairly horrible 2020. So really feeling privileged to have all those results for Kleine Zalze.
You've got a winemaker beside you who's trying to pretend that he's very cool and not too flustered by all these awards. His wine. But you've got to be, Alastair, as much as all of the winemakers honestly will tell you that they don't set out to make wine because we want to win X award. We just want to make the best wine we can. When you get this sort of recognition, not just from one set of peers, but from such a wide range of them, even the cool, calm, collected winemaker must burst into a little song and dance now and again, and feel genuinely delighted at this sort of recognition.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. It's it's a lot of hard work, and we're in the middle of harvest at the moment, and it's a lot, literally, of blood, sweat, and tears. As much as the cliche is, it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of effort over multiple years and vintages, sort of building an understanding of your terroir, figuring out how to best express it in a commercially viable way. At the end of the day, it's also got to sell. We can't just make wines that we're going to drink. We've got to make wines that other people want to drink as well. And, it's a very slow process. We only get one chance a year to make a wine and make refinements. And, then we've also got to deal with what Mother Nature throws in our way. So to build to an end goal is a very slow, very steady process. And I'd be lying if I said it doesn't matter about winning all these awards. It does. It's a great external vindication. We knew we were doing good stuff in the winery, but they're our children. We look at them through rose-colored spectacles. So we thought they were great. We knew we liked what we were doing, and we thought we were moving in a positive direction. But to get that positive affirmation from outside, and never in our wildest dreams did we expect to get that much positive affirmation about what we were doing. And I can assure you there were many wary winemakers waking up in the morning after some of those results were announced. Each one got more exciting, and I know RJ, who's hard at work in the winery at the moment, our winemaker, he and I had a big celebration the day after the Platters results were announced. That was something we had eyed out a while back, because it's the one place where all South African wines are judged on the same platform. It's not competitions that you're ending. So it's everyone's in that guide, and getting not only Winery of the Year, but just the recognition that we were competing in the right spheres was awesome. It was really great, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain the momentum, because I know we've got some pretty exciting wines lined up in the winery to build on some of the momentum, hopefully, that we've built over the last couple of years.
Normally, when you look back at a year, you do a post-mortem. One of the tougher questions that's asked is, what went wrong? In your case, what went right? Because this was just such a storm of wine.
Yeah, excuse the pun, but the stars aligned. And there are days when you've got wines that you really believe in that don't win anything on a show circuit. You can't but buy them a bronze medal for love or money. Just thinking you've got good wine, and that's, like I said, it's the vindication from external peers on multiple levels really helps. I mean, Kleine Zalze is known as being making really great value, sort of our cellar selection wines, and sometimes it's almost as though people don't take us seriously enough in the more premium, more exclusive end of the market. They would rather go to other people, and hopefully, some of the awards will just, if nothing else, make people pause to think to maybe try some of our more premium offerings, and then they can decide for themselves if they like them and agree with the various wine judges or not. Wine is a personal experience. I'm not there to tell anyone they must like our wines, but I just want them to at least try them and see if they like them for themselves.
We've got 3 of those wines to sample, and they're all looking at me and winking alluringly and demanding to try them, which I'm going to do in just a second. Comment coming in. One of our American fans is watching us, Jeff Claus from down in St. Francis, who has tried my 5 pards. Jeff, good to see you watching. Carina, just before we do try these wines, give me a sense of how this translates to you as a business, because at a time when wine is under the cosh so much and trying to make a living and scratch the way through is the big challenge for wineries, how much of an impact does winning these sorts of awards have on the commercial success of a wine brand?
I think, Dan, especially in the current climate with people not having that much money, they really want to spend their money on brands that they trust. So for us, I think being a really trusted, known brand in South Africa, and you can add to that a really nice accolade as Winery of the Year, for the consumer that wants to spend his money wisely, I think it will definitely be a decision-making tool to say, I'll choose this wine, I know it, I trust it, I know I can't go wrong. So we really hope to capitalize on that for this year. And even in our international markets, because the one great thing about when Winery of the Year for Platter is that Platter is the one guide that people do use internationally. You can argue a lot about the merits and not the merits, but it is known in Germany, it is known in the UK, it is known in Netherlands, and those are our big markets. So that Platter sticker, even in our key international markets, it does mean a lot. So that is how, in the end, we will capitalize on it. I also just want to add something. What was interesting is for many years, Kleine Zalze has been really a leader in Chenin production. And it was interesting that from the 7 5-star wines, we had 4 Chenins. So that also kind of shows you that years of focusing on getting the best Chenin fruit in the industry, from cellar selection right through to our specialist wines, it is paying off, and it's coming together as, the awards that we're winning for a lot of our Chenin Blanc as well.
And that feeds so nicely into a story I get repeatedly, both from winemakers here and people like Greg Sherwood, doing such a wonderful job of South African wine in the UK. The Chenin story, either on its own or as a headline act in the white flame, is doing wonders for South Africa. Getting those awards, getting that recognition merely reinforces that. So let's go straight into the Chenin. We've got 3 of them. I'm guessing, Alastair, that it is the Vineyard Selection Chenin that we'll be kicking off with?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to kick off from the younger to the older wines. So the first wine we've got tonight, just to show your viewers, they can see that is our Vineyard Selection 2020. So this wine is 100% older or mature bush vines. We can't claim it to be old, because there are some parcels that don't meet that 35-year-old criteria, but they're all mature. They're all 20 plus years old. And there's depending on the vintage, there's usually around about 9 parcels that we'll use to put the final blend together. And for me, it's a wonderful wine, because it allows me to express what I believe Stellenbosch Chenin should be. And it's sourced from various parcels, from the Fora area, which is towards Somerset West, closer to False Bay, with the strong ocean influences. And then we sort of move parcels a bit in from that, closer to the property itself. And then we move out behind almost into the Bottleray Hills, where we source our various Chenin parcels from. And that gives us a real sort of overview snapshot of the various subterroirs of the best Chenin in Stellenbosch. And we then use those puzzle pieces. I always talk about putting this blend together, is craft putting a puzzle together. The only difference is we don't have a fixed picture to make. We put the puzzle pieces together, those little pictures, to make a bigger, more detailed picture of what Stellenbosch Chenin is. And 2020, our style at Kleine Zalze has evolved a little bit over the years. I think as the South African style has evolved, I think we discovered the grape or we rediscovered the grape, and we were making very big, very ripe, almost Anjou-like Chennons. And we've realized we've got comfortable in our own skins to make wines that express our terroir rather than try and mimic other regions. Obviously, in that particular case, the Loire in France. And those that have been to the Cape and been to Stellenbosch will know that there's big, imposing, beautiful mountains. And all the soils that we're working with are decomposed granite, off the slopes of these mountains. And so we've come to Kleine Zalze to really try and express what granite-derived soils do with Chenin Blanc in our area. So all the parcels we work with are on decomposed granite soils. So to do that, we've scaled back on the new wood. This is 100% barrel fermented, and it's all older oak. It's all neutral, mostly neutral oak. There is some second fill barrels used, and there's no malolactic. It's all about letting the terroir shine through. And when you get granite Chenin correctly, done well, you get this beautiful stony freshness. It's not an acidic freshness. It's not that sour tartness. There's just like and it's a difficult thing to describe, but there's a definite pebbly freshness on the wine. And I think this 2020's got it in spades. It's, it was bottled around about October, beginning of October last year. And it was a little bit disjointed for the first couple of months in bottle. I had it in December, and I was happy with it. I knew what the blend looked like before bottling, but it really took quite a knock post-bottling. And I'm very glad to see that, in the new year, I had a look in it sort of midway through January, and it's really just sort of all knitted together beautifully. And you've got this beautiful, seamless transition from this beautiful quince-like and with hints of citrus on the nose to this very broad yet fresh palate. I think this is a great expression of what Chenin should be.
I think that freshness is what hits me first. I see Carina's kind of in two minds. Yes, this is amazing, but if you're making wine in your vineyard collection so well, how is she going to get people to buy the family reserve? Well, we'll find out in just a moment. Take it up a level. What I do want to know in terms of this, you've mentioned talking about a Stellenbosch style of Chenin Blanc. And for me, it's a big part of not just Chenin, but a lot of our wines, where the international market, the people who are tasting, drinking, celebrating wine at a kind of the top level, I feel starting to no longer just say South African Chenin or South African Shiraz or South African Cab, but there's an increasing understanding that we are able to give a fairly clear identity of our terroir in the different regions, and that a Stellenbosch Chenin does sit out quite differently from, say, a Scotland Chenin.
No, I think absolutely. I think, Dan, you've obviously been a big fan and supporter of the Chenin Association, and you mentioned INA and the work that they do to promote Chenin in South Africa. Stellenbosch by no means is the only Chenin region. I love Stellenbosch Chenin. I fell in love with wine in Stellenbosch. I'm partial to most things Stellenbosch. But the stuff the guys are doing in the Swartland, I think you've got Barber Simeon coming up in the next flight, and they also make amazing Chenins out there in the Slanghoek, and some. There's a lot of diversity in great Chenin. I had a beautiful Chenin out of Elkin the other day. So there are a lot of subplots to the Chenin story in South Africa, and each one is unique, and I think we've got to embrace them all. There's no right or wrong, but obviously we're a Stellenbosch property. We are very Stellenbosch. Kobus, our owner, is born and bred Stellenbosch, so we focus on what our home turf gives us. It's obviously a terroir that we understand a bit better, so all our premium Chenins is focused on Stellenbosch. And then we can maybe segue that into the family reserve, because this is now, again, a more specific expression of a few vineyard sites in Stellenbosch.
Carina, let's talk very quickly about the market segment that these next two wines occupy as part of a greater South African wine story. And we all know the extent to which we struggled in the international markets having flooded them with lots of cheap wine to get people to understand that actually more expensive South African wine was worth buying. How much now of our South African wine story is being told by these sorts of wines, and how important is it for us to keep pushing them, to make people realize that these are wines worth investing in?
I think it is super important to do that, because you know how marketing works. In the end, you promote and you showcase your best, and that has a halo effect on the rest. Unfortunately, when international markets opened up for us, we started it the wrong way by giving them lots of cheap instead of giving them lots of good. But then again, I think winemaking in South Africa improved so much over the last 20 years that probably in the 90s, we could not put the kind of top-end fine wines on the table that we can now. So, but, you know, Gous has been doing a lot of work, and I'm sure Joe will talk about that on your next show, to really put these wines in front of journalists. And the whole conversation in the UK amongst the top wine people is changing, and changed a lot, to talk about the high-end South African wines. Unfortunately, the power of the supermarkets is immense, so that's not always so easy to change the whole image. But we see the same thing in the Netherlands, where on average South African wine is now selling for a much higher price than what it did 5 years ago. And again, a lot of interest in the high end, the interesting wines. But I do think what we still lack to get South Africa on the next level is kind of more the mid-high tier wines that you can produce volume, that you can have a real presence in the market, but at a high price point. And for Kleine Zalze, that is where we see our vineyard selection range going, is you can win the awards, but you can also produce enough volume that you can actually have scale to actually have a presence on a global stage, which is what South Africa is lacking, is those almost the middle premium brands. We now have a lot of conversation on the real high end, the Moulineaus, you know, the Alights, the Saudis, you know, you have that, and that's amazing. But then there's quite a big gap when you get again to just supermarket South African wine. So that filling that gap is really the challenge.
I think it's a challenge that Kleine Zalze are meeting, and doing so with both enthusiasm and success. Ina Smith dialing in while sitting in a bath of Chenin Blanc, which she is drinking from. Congratulations to the Kleine Zalze team and their wonderful 2020 results. And then big Rob Armstrong in between catching snakes in Franschhoek. Well done to the KZ team on your well-deserved accolades. I've got a Kleine Zalze 05 Cab Sav Magnum sleeping nicely in the middle. I'm looking forward to trying with a Groothoekvlees soon. Might have to join you for that one, Big Rob. Let's head over to those other two wines then, Alastair. We have the 19 Family Reserve and the 18 Family Reserve. Let's try them in tandem, if we may. And give me an understanding of what makes them stand out and their subtle but important differences.
Yeah, I think, Dan, I mean, it's the same winemaking team. It's the same winemaking philosophy. We're trying to express sight on all these parcels of Chenin I've talked about. And obviously then there's three that sort of really form a core of the Family Reserve. There's one in particular that is the core every year, and then two play a supporting cast. But it's not hard and fast that it has to be those three. If needed, we'll use a tiny percentage of another lot if we feel it's going to make a distinct contribution to the wine. But yeah, this wine is centered around a single parcel of fruit, and then we construct the wine around that parcel in a year. Some years it's almost a single vineyard. Other years, there's quite significant portions blended into it. It's again to try give a specific, unique expression of Chenin. The interesting thing is we harvested that parcel today. So it was a parcel planted in 1980. So that gives it, 41 years old this year. So it's a nice mature parcel of fruit. It's healthy. We worked with the vineyard to keep it healthy, that it'll go well on for another 40 or 50 years and still continue to produce great fruit. again, when I look back on what we have done and where we've come from as a Chenin producing country, and Kleine Zalze was part of that earlier story, the very bold style of Chenins were the big voluptuous, showy wines were what we needed to establish ourselves. So they had their place, but again, sometimes maybe masked some of the finer subtlety that you get out of Chenin. So again, we've moved away from any botrytis, any malolactic, and again, no new wood, which is important to maintain, I think, the mineral identity of the wine. The main parcel, and we'll start with the 2019. The main parcel of this wine has a beautiful, almost preserved lemon character to it. And in some years, it can almost be a bit off-putting. It can be a bit too, and it's a saline quality. You're not going to taste salt in the wine, but there's a definite saline minerality to the wine, which comes out of this core parcel every year, and it is everything that we build around. There's also a beautiful, almost lanolin, waxy thread that runs through the wine. That again is this parcel. What's cool about this parcel, it's quite a low-lying parcel. It comes right down off the slopes. It's not high up on a mountain. It's quite a unobtrusive-looking patch of vineyard. And it's got this beautiful deep clay soil with a lot of coffee clip, which is little ironstone, ferrites, something like that. The industry, we call it coffee clip. They look like little coffee beans. And so the roots go deep down into the clay because this gravel runs through. So with the gravel running through the clay, the roots go down. We had to excavate, the farmer had to excavate some irrigation lines, and I got him to dig down 3 meters. And at 3 meters, we still found plenty of vineyard roots, and they were still going. One day I'd like to find out how far they go down. So they're accessing the terroir, but right on top, it's obviously an ancient bit of river or something has deposited some sand, and it's almost like this fine quartzy sand, which is indicative of old weathered granite, into the topsoil. And I think that little bit of the top feeder roots sit in a drier, more quartzy sand. It's still fairly clay, but more sand-rich clay. And you get this beautiful citrus freshness and this linearity. And I love the wine just on its own. But again, we are trying to express what we think is the ultimate expression of a specific site, but of what we can do with it in that year. So we use it again. It's the frame, and then we flesh it out with some other parcels. The 2 other parcels are also, all 3 parcels sit quite close to False Bay. They're from the broader Fora area, not far from another illustrious Chenin producer, Mr. Ken Forrester, the same general ward or area that he is. And we get 2 other parcels also. One is nearly 47 years old on a very shallow soil. There's a granite bank that runs underneath it. It's a very weak, very poor growing site. We get literally maybe, if it's a ton a hectare off the block, it's a lot. If we get 2 tons in total off that block, it's a good vintage. But it's an unbelievably concentrated, powerful granite mineral fresh parcel. But if you get anything like a Quincy persimmon fruit on this, it's usually that parcel that brings it to the wine. The 2018 was a hot vintage, hot and dry vintage, as we all know. And so this wine you'll see comparing, this is the 19, was a relatively wet vintage. We had proper rains, and then the growing season was cool. So this is a bit leaner and a bit fresher. When we look at the 2018 to compare it to, you'll see, 1, it's a year older, but 2, you'll see it's a bit broader. It's a bit more like I talked about the older style South African Chenins. The nature of the vintage meant that it was a bit riper, a bit richer. When you smell it, you'll see there's that fruit's a little bit more forward. You'll get some of that citrus peel. It's just a more intense, more concentrated version of the 19. But the 19 has still got its concentration. It's just got that mineral freshness that makes it look a little bit leaner. Very typical of the 2 vintages. I think both awesome expressions of the respective vintages. What's really exciting, and I've talked about it a lot, we want to keep the intensity. We want to keep the density of flavor. But we don't want to lose texture. Texture is of paramount importance. And I think this is where maybe I think the class of the Family Reserve starts showing. So a lot of people taste the vineyard selection, they taste the Family Reserve, and they go, we don't get it. Why is the one so much more expensive than the other? Why do you think it's so much better than the other? Lots of things. Lots of people go, I just flat out prefer the vineyard selection. And that's cool too. Again, you've got to enjoy what you're drinking. You mustn't be forced into drinking. But when it comes to texture, and it's something that I beat the drum on about a lot, is we talk about texture and structure on red wines all the time. We forget texture and structure are very important on white wines. I work for a guy, Rocky O'Callaghan, in Australia. He's got a winery there called Rockford. And Rocky used to talk about structured white wines from the Barossa of yesteryear. And I said to him, what are you talking about? And he, funny enough, was segueing to Semillon, worked with Semillon, and he loved Semillon out of the Barossa. And obviously New South Wales is quite well known for its Semillons. And when you get them right, they've got great texture. And not long after working at Rockford, I got a gig in Spain, and subsequently a few years later lived in Spain for 3 years, and I experienced the wines of northern Spain, the white wines of northern Spain, Galicia and Albarino and Rias Baixas, and you even go down into Portugal. They've still got there, it's Albarino and then not Albarino, and it's the same variety, and they've got these, they're not particularly aromatic wines, but they've got beautiful texture when you get them right. And this Family Reserve, the texture, there's an unending texture to this wine. It's so broad, but without being heavy. And it's something we really work on, is to try and build on the texture of the wine without losing freshness. We don't want it we want to keep the viscosity, but we don't want it to be heavy. And one of the things is we've started working with terracotta amphora. And we've made some small releases of wines that we've made in terracotta, but the whole idea behind the terracotta is not to go all hipster and try and emulate what some of my colleagues are doing out of the Swartland and whatnot. It's more about trying to ferment a portion of the vineyard in a very naked environment, which is the terracotta amphora, and use that as a component back into the wines. And both, the 2020 Family Reserve, which will obviously be released in another year's time. So it's still a year and a bit away from seeing the light of day, so to speak, has got a significant proportion of amphora wine blended back into it. And I think we've ratcheted up the textural element of the wine again.
We're not going hipster, so down in texture, this designer stubble using terracotta amphora. We have got Malu Lambert champing at the bit to join us with a semi-on. But just before we say goodbye to Team Kleine Zalze, Carina, very quickly, you have got a spot on opening day talking economics in the world of wine at Wine Futures 2021. That looks like a really important gathering of some very cool people.
Yeah. No, I think that is that's quite a big thing, and it's been coming for a few months. And yes, it's interesting that, globally, the wine industry struggles with all the same issues around, the economic impact, the impact on restaurants and hospitality, equality in the wine industry, sustainability and the environment, change consumer behavior. So I think there will be some really, really interesting discussions. We all have the same issues, just on different levels. So yeah, very much looking forward to hear the perspective from colleagues from all around the world about these issues and how do we tackle them.
Of course, the most important people at that conference are all South African, and Carina is headlining the South African Challenge there. If you'd like to be part of it, you can get yourself a 4-day pass. They're normally €125. They come down to just €65 using the Nickel 60 code, Wine Future 2021. That's next Tuesday to Friday, and includes some really cool content from Dan Really Likes Wine. Guys, I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I've got an equally enthusiastic wine aficionado. So I will say goodbye with some words from Cindy Everly. Congrats, Alastair and Carina from Cindy at Great Domains. We'll be popping in to pick up some wines soonest. congratulations again. It's not just been a brilliant 2020, but you've also been a beacon for the rest of the wine industry to follow in terms of the way you're approaching things, not just making great wine, but running a terrific business. I think you're in a fabulous space, but I know there's a lot of exciting developments still to come. So thank you for the time. Thank you for some great wine. The comparison to Shannon's is fabulous. I look forward to be down at the restaurant in the tasting room with you both soon and trying out that 2020 family reserve with you. So a big thank you, guys, and much, much appreciated.
Excellent. Thanks for having us.
Alastair, Carina, Gous joining us from Kleine Zalze on the back of just a ridiculous 2020. Also having, I think, a really good 2020 in that she probably sampled more wine than she's ever sampled before. And this from somebody who does sample quite a lot of wine, is one of my favorite people in the industry. The Louis Roeder Young Wine Writer of the Year, Jancis Robinson, won't write anything unless she approves it first. She has an extraordinary way about her in terms of bringing wine to life with a poetry that throws the science and textbooks out the window and instead gives you something you can really strike a chord with. Malu Lambert, a very good evening. Welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Good evening, Dan. Gosh, I'm actually blushing with that introduction. Thank you.
Well, it is richly deserved because I love reading the work that you put together. And just before we jump into this almost unhealthy obsession of yours with Semillon, just the wine writing, we've discussed it to a degree in the past, but with every passing year, I get the sense that not only does your craft become more honed, but your relationship with wine and the way you're able to bring it to life to those of us who enviously read your writing and wish we'd thought of that first is so inspiring. And you just you seem like you're in such a good space in terms of the relationship you have with wine and the way you're able to write about it.
Thank you, Dan. And yes, it's called complete immersion. I'm I'm studying diploma WCT. I'm tasting as much wine as I possibly can. I am deep in it. And the relationship is going well. I think the point is practice, and taste. And I'm enjoying the benchmarking of international wines against South African wines.
And of course, the South African wines come out on top consistently because we're all very objective and love to celebrate South African wine. And in particular, some Semillon. Just before I introduce it, a quick word from Wellington Maromba, who's watching, just wrapping up on Kleine Zalze. A wonderful job indeed. You're producing exceptionally great wines, lots of character in your wines, and delicious. Congrats, Wellington. Good to have you watching. This Semillon of yours, if you're trying to understand Malu's relationship with Semillon, I think Ken Forrester with Chenin Blanc, multiply it by Bayer's Truter with Pinotage, and then just add a healthy dose of Mike Ratcliffe with All Things Stellenbosch, and you've got Malu Lambert on Semillon. You've written about it, particularly on Wine Wizard with Michael Freejohn, but a couple of other spaces as well. And you really get under the skin, so to speak, of this grape. How did you fall in love with Semillon, and what is the attraction here, Malu?
Well, this is a long love story, but for me, Semillon, number one, is the most historic grape variety in the Cape. It was planted in the 1800s, so it's at the very genesis of our winemaking tradition. And at that point, it was over 80% of our plantings, mostly for the production of brandy. So it's one of the old brandy again, along with Chenin. And the amazing thing about Semillon is Semillon Gris, which is a mutation of the white grape. And it's mostly unique to South Africa. There's some of it's apparently in the south of France, maybe a little bit in Australia, but nothing at all to write home about. We have still small, but definite quantities of it here. And also we have very old vineyards. So we have the Franschhoek. Franschhoek is the cache of all the old vineyard sites. We have one Lando de Val planted in 1905. So it's really, really historic, number one. And because of its history and the old vine nature of it, the wines that you get from these grapes are incredibly concentrated and have incredible texture and length and real just a feeling of history, just like fizzling through them. And then your wife might like this, Dan, but this is the red wine for white wine lovers. It really is, or the opposite way around. It's like a red wine, the way it lies on your palate, the way it has structure and length and ageability. Semillon can age for years. I had a Haute Espoir 2006 the other day, and my goodness, it jumped out the bottle. It was so fresh. And this is, what, 14, 15 years ago.
I know Big Rob Armstrong from Motorsport is watching at the moment. He'll be very happy to hear that. I've had a couple of his wines. I had some of his Chardonnay that was almost 20 years old, but his Semillon as well. In fact, I've got some older stuff here. It is glorious, glorious, glorious. It's also, if you're watching this and wine is still fairly on in terms of your journey, it can be a great step up. And I don't say that in a derogatory way, but in terms of broadening the palate from the Sauvignon Blanc, with which so many people begin their white wine journey in particular. It's kind of grown-up Sauvignon Blanc. We've got 3 of them to try, Malu, and you've hand-picked all of these, so I know they're going to be something rather special. Already, Angela Lloyd saying Semillon is queen. Long live Semillon. I know she usually has a bottle and a half for breakfast before she really gets wine drinking day started. Schalk Stapelberg saying, my mouth is watering. Schalk, you do realize this is not Pinotage. This is Semillon. First one we've got, Malu. It's got a name that you definitely need a few glasses of wine to get through. It's Die Kaap die Goede Hoop Lang Citrusberg Groendrijf Oosjaar Semillon. Lots of Afrikaans there. It's Semillon. Tell me about it.
Okay, so first thing I want to point out about this wine is its name. Groendrijf means green grape, and that's what Semillon was known as back in the day, basically green grape. And then when the mutation of Semillon Gris was found, it was Rooi-groen, basically red-green, or Rooi-groen-red. So that's the first confusing part of the label there. The lane on top is actually the name of the farmer of the vineyard. So this Cape of Good Hope sites, these are just extraordinary value. This is made from vines dating back 65 years in the Citrusdal region, and it's 130 Rand a bottle. It just blows my mind. And the whole range, the whole Cape of Good Hope range is really good value. The Riebeeck Rivier Chenin Blanc can stand, shoulder to shoulder some of the best Chenins in the country. It's really worth a range worth checking out. All old wine sites and by Antonio Rupert. The other thing I want to point out about these wines is that I've got a Franschhoek wine for the very end. Normally it'd be an all Franschhoek flight because I love the Buchenhoek's Kloof, the Damascene, the Rickety Bridge, the Hortusfoy. I mean, this is where old wine Semillon really comes alive. But I also wanted to illustrate that there's diversity in Semillon, and there are other regions making incredible Semillon. So this is from the Citrusdal, aka Cedarburg region, and it's actually from the Skurfberg. And wine lovers will know that that's the famous Chenin site. So this is an old vine Semillon from the Skurfberg for 130 Rand. It's unbelievable. I'm going to use my handy caravan.
Which has to be the single greatest invention in the history of wine. Corrivan team, if you're watching Derek and the team of Great Domains, Corrivan's just amazing. Saves our lives, really, doesn't it?
Definitely saves our livers.
All right, so you've poured it out. I agree wholeheartedly on the value for money. The Cape of Good Hope range is just some staggeringly good wine. This one in particular, you haven't chosen it without a good reason. Yes, I know it's good value, but there's got to be something special to the wine as well. Why has it caught the palate and danced upon it? So, I mean, just that length, as it lies on your palate, I mean, that fruit is going and going and going and going. It has such incredible length. And a slight kind of waxy undertone. And it almost holds this promise of, yes, I am going to develop. I'm going to show you new things. And another great thing about Semillon is that you get amazing tertiary development from the grape itself. So I always like to say, Chardonnay is like a winemaker's cultivar because you add oak, you do lots of leaf stirring and Battenard and all this stuff. And you can, Chardonnay loves it. But Semillon, this is a wine drinker's cultivar because it's, if you treat it well and cellar it and seek them out, it'll reward you in years and years to come. Or even if you just open a bottle and leave it in a fridge, it'll develop. So I love this, and it's got the promise that's very citrusy right now. Lots of white peach, almost like a peach spice, spicy peach skin. It just really mouth coating and that zippy acid, almost a crystalline acid from that Skurfberg mountain site. And this is quite a stunning wine. It's a glorious wine on its own. You and I share a passion verging on obsession with good food as well. What is Malu Lambert either whipping up in her acclaimed kitchen or picking up off a top menu to sit alongside this Semillon?
Wow, so I mean, you've hit on a great point there. Semillon is most certainly a food wine. It can be sometimes maybe a bit rich and a bit overwhelming, a bit too textural to drink on its own, or maybe just a nice lunchtime wine is the wine you're drinking. I love seafood with this because of the lovely stone fruits, the acidity, the greenness, or something like braised pork with some apples, those roasted apples. But I think complexity is where it's at when it comes to Semillons. Have a range of flavors, because Semillon reveals itself, especially this kind of old vine, concentrated Semillon. It will reveal itself, and it'll keep changing in the glass. So as should your meal.
This is might be from the Swartland, but its home would be Franschhoek, given that's where Antonio Rupert find themselves. And Grant Sauls throws forward to Franschhoek. Buchenhout's Kloof Semillon 04 is a house favourite at my place. Grant, I really need to come and visit you. You keep mentioning these amazing wines, and you actually have them. I want to move in with you. Angela Lloyd following up on that. Grant, you're so lucky if you still have a BHK 04. That is a legendary vintage. And Cindy Everly, Great Domains, is watching. That's a reference to the use of the Coravan. All right, let's say goodbye to the Swartland / Franschhoek for a moment and head off to somewhere we might not be expecting. And this is a wine from, is it fair to say, and this is not meaning to be demeaning at all, but possibly the most underrated wine stretch of South Africa?
Not at all. You're 100% correct. But just before we get on set, I just want to show Grant that's a 2004 Buchenhout's Kloof.
Oh.
Empty. I drank it on a Tuesday night during hard lockdown because, But anyway, that's the Buchenhout's Kloof. You are not wrong in saying that, but there's good reason. It's only been getting attention it's been getting in the last 10 years, and that's largely driven by Attila of Opstal in the Slanthoek region. He's really, he started the Breeder Makers organization, which is flying the flag for the region Chenin, and that's really what the region is known for, is Chenin. But I just thought I'd bring in something a little bit different, because I really did want to show you how diverse Semillon and how it's planted in pockets across our region. So this is the Barber. You see that? Named for Atti's grandfather, I think. It's from the 1940s. So his name was Issa Attila. And after World War II, he came back to Worcester and worked as a barber for 7 years until he met his wife, the daughter of Carl Ebsen. And they got married. And the proud tradition continued at Opstal. So this is from a vineyard planted in 1998.
And already I've had a little sip of it. It speaks to the conversation we were having a little earlier with the team at Kleine Zalze on Chenin Blanc having a particular feel based on the region from which it emanates. And already you've got 2 glasses of Semillon, and they could be from different planets, let alone different regions. They are so different, both wonderful, but so different.
I mean, definitely the similarity is that texture and that mouth coatiness. But I mean, Buchenhout's Kloof wines are so distinct because you have that sunshiny, almost ripe stone fruit. I mean, this fruit is ripe, but there's just that clear kind of linearity just running underneath it, which speaks to the high diurnal swings they have in this valley. I don't know if you know the Buchenhout's Kloof, but it's just this wide valley, just scooped out in the middle, surrounded by these mountains, and the heat gets trapped there during the day. And then the nights are very, very cold. So very high diurnal swings, meaning good acidities, and you can get that ripeness of sunshiny fruit, but also this lovely acidity and freshness.
And also for those people who maybe don't know the Buchenhout's Kloof for much more than Chenin, which it has been so celebrated for, this is another great example of the range of expression which the valley can give us. See, Amanda de Klerk is watching Semillon like Viognier, great food wines. This is going to be a cracker as well. And Skalk Stapelberg, who's broken free from the shackles of pinotage, saying, "Where can I order? Sign me up. I'll send you Malu's mobile number. She'll sort you out, no problem." Terrific. So it's another great one, and it's a wine you kind of start wanting to enjoy because Ati's just such a lovely guy, and then you drink it and you actually forget he's a lovely guy, and you think, this is just such lovely wine, give me more.
This for me, this compared to the previous wine, and there's a lot more kind of caramel, creme brulee, baked custard. There's a lot more tertiary development like already, but it's an unctuous, delicious, generous wine, much like Ati himself.
Yeah, it is glorious. That creme caramel does come through as a lovely little whisper on the base. So, all right, 2 down, onto one of the great characters of South African wine. He produced some fabulous videos on social media during moments of boredom/inspiration. We head to the Thorn and Daughters team and Tin Soldier, Ms. Lambert.
That's right. So this is straight Semillon Gris, which is very unusual. There are a few examples. There's the Malu the Gris, which is unfortunately a guild wine, so not widely available. Jasper Wickens for Swaver also makes a Gris, and I have a suspicion that they get this from the same vineyard. So what's really interesting about this wine is that this is a vineyard that was planted from cuttings of an older vineyard of Semillon Gris. And it was widely thought that you can only, it's an old wine thing, so only after 30 years will the grapes mutate into Gris. But Jasper Wickens' wife, Francisca, is a viticulturist, and she has planted this vineyard, and it's produced Gris grapes immediately, thereby proving you can actually do it. And I've also heard that the Malu have planted now a Semillon Gris vineyard. So new young Gris vineyards are being planted around the country. And as I said, I don't have the details exactly on this wine, but it's Swartland, and it says it was created from a Masal's selection of a Gris vineyard. So I think it's the same one, actually. So anyway, let's have a look.
Tell me a little bit about the colour here, Malu, because mine certainly is a lot more golden than the other two. Is yours the same? And if so, is there a particular reason for it?
So the other two are straight Semillons. They might have a bit of Gris in them. I think many times producers don't sort out the Gris component, but this is straight Gris. So this is a red-skinned Semillon. So that's from the skins.
A lot more herbaceous. This, you're getting a very different nose to that. It's certainly a very pleasant one, but very different, very striking.
Yeah, tangerine, rooibos tea. There's like a real, like almost like smoking rocks minerality, volcanic a bit. I don't think this is everyone's tea. This is a really
Yeah, I had Jasper's last year, which is also terrific. It's got, if you've ever had the misfortune of going around to former Springbok rugby player Rob Lowe's house, and he's given you a cup of his cancer-killing green, I won't even call it juice. It's basically sludge that he produces. The nose is not dissimilar, but this is a lot more pleasant to drink than the stuff from.
Wow, no, that's correct. Yeah, this is what really draws me to Semillon, the Semillon Gris. It's just so enchanting, and I think that we have this treasure trove of this grape, of this amazing grape that nobody else in the world has or can replicate. Jasper said to me on his wine, Roy Groen, that he believes that they're trying to figure out why it mutated to red like it does, and he believes that it's a grape trying to protect itself from the sun, so almost like a sunburn protection kind of thing. And I really just, it fills my mind with such imagination to think that in South Africa we have this treasure, and I really think we should talk about it. Semillon Gris and all the old wine Semillon.
It reminds me of a piece Michael Friedjon wrote just a few weeks ago talking about the need to steer clear of trying to specialize per region and instead embrace the diversity of our regions, and in this case embrace the diversity of the grapes we have access to and the ability to make such wonderful wine from. We don't have too long to go, sadly. I can talk to you all night, Malin. We'll have you back again very soon. But before we do go, you've got something else there which you haven't sent to me, which is enormously selfish. But do tell me about it because it sounds terribly exciting.
So we're ending here with, I've got a bottle for you, don't worry. So when you come down to the Cape, it's got your name on it. So this is GD1 Semillon. I don't know if you can see it. Well, it's not a proper label. GD stands for Groendreef, in, and it's purported to be the original clone that was planted in Franschhoek back in the day. So a gang of 10 winemakers in the Franschhoek region got together and decided we actually have to create a signature kind of singular style for Semillon in order to promote the region, because as we've discussed, it can be quite diverse. So they isolated the pockets of GD1 clone at Benwood Vineyards. They include people like Morrison, Waterswa, Stony Brook, Rickety Bridge, Mont Rochelle, La Petite Ferme. There are 10 of them. And so stage 1 was in 2019, when they just each harvested grapes and made them to whatever specifications. And the idea was to then taste them and score them and knuckle down the style. So they did that. And then the next vintage came along, which was 2020, this one. And they decided that what worked best for the previous tasting was tank fermented, de-stalked grapes, but anything else could kind of go in terms of least contact and so forth. So now we're in stage 3 of the project, which is 2021. They just harvested the grapes, I think 3 days ago, actually, for this new vintage. And what's quite interesting about the 2020 is that, it happened in the pandemic, or the ongoing pandemic. So in order to do their tastings, had secret drop-offs around Franschhoek where they picked them up and they did their Zoom tastings and they collated their scores. But it's a really exciting project, and it's quite an affordable wine. It goes for 150 Rand, whereas many old wine examples go for 300 and above. They're premium price, so they're kind of, it's not the kind of wine you can grab off the shelf, but you are going to try this because it's 150 Rand. It's still made from old wine Semillon, and it's been carefully considered. So I think it's quite an exciting project. GD1.
Look out for it if you've had your imagination piqued by the discussion of Semillon guided by Malu, then this is one you want to add to your list for wines to explore. Malu, we have to leave it there, sadly, but we'll have you back again soon. What I will ask you to do, though, and you will thank me exclusively and send me lavish gifts, is head over to malulambert.com. That is Malu's website. It is a tribute to the work she has done in print and continues to celebrate. Quite wonderful wine writer who brings the world of wine and the glory and the magic and the mystery of the grape to life quite beautifully, and somebody I spent far too much time reading and missed plenty of deadlines and meetings as a result. Malu, it's always a delight spending some time with you. Thank you so much. Enjoy finishing off those 3 bottles. I know they won't last very long, and look forward to seeing you back. Dan really likes wine again soon.
Thanks so much, Dan. Good to see you.
There we go. Malu Lambert, a big thank you for joining us. Wellington Maromba, whoa, your lineup is classic. This goes to show the treasures we have in South Africa. Grant Sauls confirming that to Angela, he managed to get some on auction last year. Good place to find wine. And then just throwing back to Kleine Zalze with Lisa Manley just a little earlier saying exceptional wine from Kleine Zalze, all accolades very well deserved, Lisa, along with Ian, one half of the premier couple, the first couple of perception management here in South Africa. And Grant Sauls finishing off great lineup, Dan. Well, I think so as well. Don't have much to do with it, but I was overjoyed to try it. So some lovely wine from Kleine Zalze. A big thank you to Carina Host, who will be appearing next week at Wine Future 2021, along with Alastair Rimmer, giving us 3 lovely Shannons from Kleine Zalze, and then a celebration of Semillon with Malu Lambert. And that just about wraps us up. Leaves me just to say, join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, absolutely free of charge. Send your smart shopper number through to 36775. You get 3 times the smart shopper points and all the wines you buy, 20% off 10 different wines every month. There are also 25% reductions on a specific case and a magnum each month. There are also some cool competitions and the chance to be part of some great events. So if you're not already a member, it's free of charge. Please do jump in. And wrapping up, Angela Lloyd, more on Semillon, please, Dan. We shall do our best, Angela. And Keith Magoli, Kleine Zalze has grown in leaps and bounds. It certainly has. Lovely guests today, some lovely wine. I'm going to rush off to go and join the Dan Nicholl Show studio and Instagram Live with Shannon Ezra, the star of Mnet's hit news show, The Lioness, that's been going for a few weeks now as we chat to her. Join me again on Monday when Colleen Truter joins us with some new releases from Ardensach and a brand new label, Harry Hartmann, a Swiss dentist making wine out of Somerset West. We'll find out what it's all about. Enjoy the rest of your week and celebrate Global Wine Drinking Day. But let's be honest, every day is Global Wine Drinking Day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Cheers.